Imagine you lived in a total surveillance state, where everything you do or say at all hours of every day is permanently recorded and analyzed and looked at by someone intelligent. However, you also have perfect privacy. Sounds absurd, right? Well, let's do a little thought experiment. In 1980, the philosopher John Searle proposed what is known as the Chinese room argument. It posits that just because something acts like it's intelligent and understands what you are telling it, doesn't mean that it actually does understand what you are telling it. Assuming you speak neither Mandarin nor Cantonese, imagine you are put in a huge room with a lot of little plates with Chinese characters on them. And there's a window in that room, and outside of that window, there are people who speak Chinese. Those people have their own set of plates with Chinese characters on them, and they will put them up to send you a message. You have a very detailed set of instructions as to which other plates to put up against the window so the people outside see them, depending on which letters the people outside put up for you to see. You have no idea what is happening. You do not understand anything of what you are putting up against that glass. You're just looking at an input, looking at your manual, and then producing an output. To the people outside, however, it seems like you are having a conversation with them in Chinese. To them, it's as though you spoke Chinese, because they can basically have a conversation with you and you will always produce a proper answer. Basically, you pass the Turing test of having a conversation with a Chinese person in Chinese without even knowing Chinese. The person who wrote the instructions that you were given, aka the person that programmed you, knows Chinese. You, however, do not. This is how most translation software works. You give it an input, it looks up the proper output, and then gives that back to you. It doesn't understand what you are telling it or what it is telling you in return, because it doesn't need to know this in order to get the job done. Now, many companies, like Google for instance, are developing translation software that is self-learning via neural networks. Google Translate has become a lot better very recently, and that's because Google turned over operations to an AI. It appears like, though we cannot be entirely certain of this, that the new Google Translate has chosen to develop its own language, which is designed and streamlined to facilitate translation between other different languages in order to get the job done. This does not, however, bypass the Chinese room argument. The new Google Translate can teach itself how to translate concepts, but it doesn't need to know what those concepts actually represent. Google Translate knows what the word door means in various languages and contexts. However, it does not actually have a conception of what a door is. And why would it? Really, it's completely unnecessary information. But hey, maybe Google Translate is a super smart AI that knows everything about everything that we do. It's not like we'd be able to tell. Code written by self-improving machines rarely comes with a large package of comments that explains what each individual section of code does. Probably most of it isn't even understandable to humans as code at all. Basically, such an AI is a black box. We know how to teach it what it's supposed to do, but we don't really know how it actually does what it's supposed to do. That's just up to educated guesses. Much like human brains, by the way. We know how to teach people stuff, we know how to do stuff, but we don't necessarily know all the details of how that works. So let's take all this and move it into the realm of mass surveillance. Right now, there's people involved in the process of having mass surveillance in the interest of whatever national security is supposed to mean. They use machines to assist them in their surveillance efforts, probably also self-learning machines at this point, but at the end of the day, it's still humans. And because this is a thought experiment, we can just assume that this is all replaceable with an AI that does all of that surveillance instead of any humans. Let's bypass arguments about the effectiveness of mass surveillance, because if you look at the numbers, it doesn't seem to be particularly effective when compared to just traditional policing methods, which are entirely sufficient to do what it's supposed to do. Let's just assume that there is this perfect super AI that can watch every single person at all hours of the day. It always knows what you do, where you are, what you say, and will generate a personality profile on you that probably knows you better than you know yourself. Its job is to tell police whenever there is a crime anywhere. So every time a crime is committed, police is dispatched, and the incident is documented to perfection. It can also immediately hand down a sentence that is appropriate for the crime that was committed as per what the law says, because all of the information has already been passed by itself, who is also an impartial judge. And the good thing about this is that the government cannot use this to spy on you because it is a black box. The government does not know what happens inside of the mind of that AI. They cannot look into it. They don't know about your love for anime body pillows. They don't know that you sing Katy Perry in the shower, even though the AI does know this. The AI may not even be able to identify what you are doing when you are not engaging in criminal behavior. Yes, it'll listen to you singing Teenage Dream in the shower, but it has no idea what you are doing, because it's entirely unnecessary for it to be able to identify non-criminal behaviors, because it's only supposed to identify criminal behaviors. I had to Google Katy Perry songs for this, so you're welcome. Support me on Patreon. And yes, of course, practically speaking, if such an AI really did exist, there would be no reason why the government or the people running it couldn't just alter its parameters to have it look for dissidents or whatever. But this is still a thought experiment, so let's just assume that isn't possible. Let's assume that the only entity that can and will surveil you 24/7 is our magic AI. If you have nothing to hide, now you actually also have nothing to fear, because abuse of justice is no longer a thing. All justice is now immediate, objective, impartial, and 100% accurate. Cross a red light, get a notification on your phone that tells you how high your fine is. Murdered someone, police is already waiting. Or, they actually can predict this and they will stop you from murdering the person, and also you get charged for attempted murder instead of murder. The AI never makes mistakes, never wrongly convicts anyone at all, and eliminates all possible avenues of corruption in the system. And my question is, would such a system even be desirable? The fair and just elimination of all crime and complete elimination of corruption in the justice system may sound kind of nice, but consider the following. What if that AI had been put into place before the legalization of homosexuality? Or before the end of apartheid in America, or before the legalization of marijuana, which is right now ongoing. Antiquated prohibitions don't just get abolished in a vacuum. If you want to talk about the prohibition, yes, of course, the rise of organized crime was a major factor in why the Volstead Act was ultimately taken back out of the Constitution. But you cannot discount the impact of a whole lot of people just going to speakeasies and drinking alcohol because they could get away with it. For a prohibited behavior to be legalized, it needs to go through a process of normalization, wherein a lot of people begin breaking the law, even though it is still illegal, but law enforcement just doesn't really care. And law enforcement doesn't really care because society has come to accept that behavior as just a normal thing that people do. Marijuana is illegal in Germany. This summer I was at Kiel Week, which is the biggest sailing festival in the world. Don't worry, I was there for the food, and also because it's like 10 minutes from my flat. It's very convenient. In one area that I basically passed by every day, they had this whole complex of police containers. They had just cops standing around there all the time. There were a lot of cars and buses parked there. It was one of the main police hubs in case anything happened. Right next to that, people were smoking weed by the lakeside. Like a lot of people smoking a lot of weed immediately next to the cops. I am talking arm's reach. The police didn't care because though it is illegal to smoke weed, right here where I live, it's just accepted and tolerated behavior. The process of marijuana legalization is happening all around the world and it's gaining ever more support every day. There's just no point in arresting people for something that everyone agrees is alright, but the books of law haven't caught up with it yet. The police were much more concerned with the people drinking completely legal alcohol in the tents and at the stalls, because they were much more likely than the potheads to get into a fight. If the perfect police AI existed, this would not be possible. Even if a police officer decided not to act, then that police officer would not be following their duties and be discharged and probably sent to jail. While on the note of Germany, imagine if the Nazis had had access to this kind of technology. Or, really any authoritarian regime for that matter. This is what's happening in China right now, and it's fucking terrifying. The fact that law enforcement is not perfect in the catching of all crimes committed anywhere at all times is actually to the benefit of society. It allows people to express opinions not just in words that politicians don't listen to, or in votes that get crushed by a system that doesn't care. They can express these opinions in actions, by doing the things that society considers should be legal, but are not. Stoner culture, its subcultures, its mainstreamization, all of these things that have helped change the public perception of marijuana and had people come around to saying, well, I don't like it, but if other people like it, they might as well smoke it. None of that would have happened if every time someone injected a marijuana cigarette, the DEA would have kicked down their door and immediately taken them to jail. This is why having perfect mass surveillance, even if entirely anonymous, and objective justice that always catches every crime is not good for people's freedom. We have no idea how society will change in the future, what norms and values they might adopt, which things they might tolerate that we currently do not. By implementing a technology such as this, if we could, we wouldn't just be inviting in all the potential for abuse that comes with it. We would also be taking away the freedom of future generations to make the world into what they need it to be. An unchanging, static society is a stagnant society. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you. Like, comment, subscribe, especially comment. I'm curious to hear people's opinions about this, because I can imagine a lot of authoritarians going, oh, but this would be perfect to implement my system of ethno-fascism. Support me on Patreon, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord server, and in that spirit, maybe smoke some weed, or don't if you don't like it. It's completely okay, because as long as you don't block other people from doing something that doesn't harm anyone, that is cool with me. And see you around, cunts.